Hello and welcome to a new episode of EU Talks. My name is Nadia Gullestrup.
And my name is Lucija Karnelutti. In this episode of EU Talks, we'll be joined by two amazing young women, Chido and Mpemba, who's the African Union Youth Envoy, and Zipporah Musau, who's the Managing Editor of Africa Renewal.
We're going to talk about digital divide, which is that not everyone have access to the same digital technologies, and we're going to focus specifically on women.
Welcome to EU Talks.
Hello and welcome to this episode. So today we're going to talk about the digital divide, which is really that not everyone around the world have access to the same technologies. And this is also something where we see differences across genders. And an example of that is really that we don't see that many women in leadership positions when it comes to, for example, tech companies. So really looking forward to talking about this today with you guys.
Today we are joined by Zipporah Musau, the managing editor of the Africa Renewal, which is a UN online magazine that focuses on development issues in Africa, and Chido and Mpemba, who is the African Union Youth Envoy. Welcome both to this episode of EU Talks. And to kick off our talk, I'd first like to ask you maybe what are some of your personal experiences both in digital environment, but also beyond that? So what do you do, what do you work, and where did you meet with the topics of the gender digital divide?
I'll start with my personal life. I was born in the generation between the analog and the digital, so I saw the transition. In personal life, growing up in rural Kenya, we didn't have mobile phones, we didn't have laptops. We had a few landlines where people would come and maybe make a call, or coin boxes on the streets where you could make telephone calls. But with time, that changed. Now we have mobile phones. My grandmother has a mobile phone. She uses it to receive calls from her kids or grandchildren. She also uses it to receive money, mobile money. So I have seen the transition in my personal life in that way. Professionally, I'm a trained journalist. I'm a print journalist. I worked in a newspaper, and it was print newspaper. And then we transitioned to online from copy and pasting, like cutting and pasting, to the whole digital computer to print technology. When I joined the UN, I'm the managing editor of Africa Renewal. As you can see, it was print form, and we print thousands of copies and ship them from New York to different countries in Africa in both English and French. Now we are fully digital. So I have seen the transition. We are attracting more young people to read us, Africa Renewal, and having different experience from when it was print. Thank you.
Awesome. I think I would tackle this from COVID-19, which was a personal experience for most of us. But you can just imagine being a young person and being in Africa and having to look at the challenges that young people are faced with, including access to technology. We do realize that during the COVID-19 era, a lot of information was digital, but at the same time, not everyone had access to that information. This also builds onto education, where there have been challenges on education because most of the education was online, but we had communities that didn't have that access online. Now, on a personal level, I would say intergenerational co-leadership, because we're born in a generation where technology has been there. There's been digital literacy as well, but yet within the working environment, you can actually see within that era that we were born in and the previous generation in terms of that exposure that has come in this being introduced to schools and in various ways as we have progressed with the younger generation.
Thank you so much. And maybe just to follow up, now you have talked about some of the issues and how it has changed. What actions, Chido, do you see that is needed in the future to ensure that we actually stop having this digital divide?
I think first of all, we need to acknowledge that this is a critical issue. such as there's a critical issue when it comes to climate change, to education, to the public health as well, then this is also a critical issue. And once we acknowledge this, finding a way to work with member states and governments to ensure that our policies look into how we can bridge this digital divide for young people as well as for young women that are also affected the most by it.
Thank you so much. And can you maybe, just describe the future that you hope that we as young people are, growing up in? How do you see that, concretely?
Okay, I envision this in a more positive manner, that if we look at bridging the digital divide right now by making investments in our infrastructure, in our policy, as well as digital literacy, then we will be able to actually close this gap. But we also need to acknowledge that there's also differentiated digital divide. For instance, most investments have been going into the urban areas, but we should not neglect the communities that are also affected the most. And if we do not address this, then we will still have this differentiated divide, but also now at an angle of the communities. So it's very important that as we look around the solutions, even with regards to the urban areas, we also build on community initiatives to ensure that no one is left behind.
And Zipporah, from your perspective, what kind of both human and also financial resources do you think we need to mitigate the digital divide?
The human and financial resources we need should focus on where we have the gaps. And the gaps are where? With the access to this digital technology, access also to the gadgets that you're going to use, and access to data. Data is very expensive, and especially in Africa that I cover, data is still very expensive. And when it's expensive, it tends to exclude the girls and women. So work on that access. Then work on literacy and skills. Because if people are not literate enough, if people are not skilled in digital technology, then they are not able to use all this digital technology. The other one is to work on, as she said, on policies and frameworks and make sure the skills that we have out there are gender sensitive. What we are seeing of late is a lot of violence, online violence, and especially targeted at women. Female journalists, for example, a lot of them go through gender trolling, the violence online, it's a lot, and that also needs to be addressed, make that space safe for women and girls to use.
Thank you so much, and really interesting that you're bringing up the perspectives about gender. So how do you think that we can actually solve this, having that gender perspective when it comes to the digital divide? Maybe just for you to elaborate a bit on it.
Yes, gender-sensitive training, first of all, and supporting our girls and women to look at STEM subjects, even when they're going through school, when they're going through employment. The UN has an initiative called African Girls Can Code, an initiative of UN Women, UNECA, and ITU. So they encourage girls not just to code, but to also look at STEM subjects and to get into STEM so that later they're absorbed in the digital world. This is aimed at getting more girls into the digital world. Once you get more people, because people design technologies that cater to their to their needs. So if all technology is designed by one gender, then it excludes the other gender. So the more we have women and girls in this digital world, the better. They will be able to come up now with the kind of technology that is geared towards their needs.
Thank you so much. And maybe the same question for you regarding, how you envision that we can have the gender perspectives in this perspective.
Okay, so in terms of the solutions, I'll say that we also need to foster public and private partnerships and ensure that this is everyone's responsibility. When it comes to the public sector, they have a role to play when it comes to our policies, and then the private sector can also make investments towards how we can build the capacities of the young women and, our youth in this regard. As she has rightfully mentioned as well, that we need to also invest in training. Training, even including when it comes to digital literacy, is very important. And in addition to this, as well as investments and research, it's important because of the way the world is going, constantly innovative, constantly changes that are happening even in the digital space, then it's important that we also invest a lot in that research too.
So we have just started the Commission on the Status of Women, the 67th Commission on the Status of Women, and it's already been amazing. The UN is buzzing with inspiring women of all ages, and we're super excited to participate in so many inspiring and amazing side events as well. What are you two personally excited about, or where are you collaborating in this year's CSW?
Yeah, I'm excited to see that this important topic is being discussed at the global level. I would like to see some of the issues addressed. I would like to see more girls in the digital world. I would like to see professionally in the artificial intelligence field that is exciting the world. I would like to see more women and girls there. I would like to see more women bosses in these organizations. But I also want to see girls having a safe environment where they can thrive online.
Okay, I'm especially excited to have youth at the table. It's very important that we have young people at the table. We have young women, and especially representing the African continent. It's very important that we have the African voice heard in these platforms at global level, because there's so much that we can also contribute towards this. I mean, we have an event that we'll be having, an intergenerational dialogue, and again, that shows the importance that we should have these conversations at global level and having each voice heard and contribute towards the solutions in building the Africa that we want.
Another thing is about a lot of misinformation, disinformation, hate speech. I like talking about a safe space for women and girls online. So that's an area that we'll be focusing on, and I'd really like to hear what they have to say about that. I know my department has been working very hard to make the digital space safer by just countering this misinformation and disinformation. We have an initiative called Verified, where if you get information, then you can verify. And I'm really excited to see that this is being discussed. Yeah.
And this just shows how broad actually the digital environment and also the female and girls' rights, how far it goes actually, because it's everything from education to access to reproductive rights and so much more. So as for us, we're also very excited for the side event that we're hosting with the African Union and Chido, where we'll be also discussing further the details of the gender digital divide. And on that point, I would love to say a very big thank you for taking the time out of your busy CSW days to come and talk to us about these important topics. And I wish you all the best in CSW and also beyond.
Thank you.
Thank you.